December 1944, Belgian Ardennes forest. The snow fell in thick curtains across the shattered landscape as 847 German medical personnel, including 214 female nurses, faced capture during the Wehrmacht's collapsing offensive. Nurse Margaret Schneider, age 26, had served 31 months in frontline medical stations from Stalingrad to France. The indoctrination had been explicit and systematic. American soldiers, she had been told repeatedly through official channels, treated captured medical personnel as legitimate military targets despite Geneva Convention provisions. The Reich Ministry of Propaganda had distributed detailed accounts, later proven fabricated, of U.S. forces executing German medical staff and desecrating field hospitals. Instead, within 90 minutes of surrender, Schneider encountered something that contradicted 18 months of official preparation. Captain James Morrison, U.S. Army Medical Corps, 1st Infantry Division, approached the captured aid station maintaining visible distance with hands away from weapons. Through a German-speaking medical officer, he stated words that would be repeated, with minor variations, at 43 separate capture sites across the Western Front between December 1944 and May 1945. You are medical personnel protected under Geneva Convention Article 12. You will continue treating wounded under American supervision. No harm will come to female staff. Male guards will maintain minimum 15-foot distance per military protocol. Across the European theater during the final 7 months of war, the United States Army Medical Department processed 1,847 German medical personnel into a system that treated captured enemy healers not as prisoners, but as temporarily supervised colleagues in a shared mission. Military records confirm that 523 were female nurses, ranging in age from 19 to 54, who had been systematically prepared through Nazi indoctrination to expect immediate violation upon capture. What they encountered instead was American military medical culture that maintained professional boundaries even in combat conditions, established collaborative treatment protocols that prioritized patient care over national enmity, and created working relationships that would fundamentally alter their understanding of American military character. This systematic dignity, documented across 127 separate medical facilities in 5 countries, would prove more effective at undermining Nazi ideology than any propaganda campaign could achieve. The German military medical system had mobilized approximately 85,000 women into nursing roles by 1944, with official records from the Reich Health Ministry confirming that 12,400 served in active combat zones. The Deutsche Frauenwerk, the Nazi women's organization, coordinated recruitment and ideological training through a network of 31 regional offices. Training protocols recovered from facilities in Heidelberg and Munich show that nurse candidates received 340 hours of medical instruction alongside 180 hours of ideological preparation, specifically addressing capture scenarios. The indoctrination intensified as Allied forces advanced. Military intelligence reports from captured documents reveal that between June and December 1944, German medical personnel attended mandatory weekly sessions titled Maintaining Honor in Enemy Hands, which emphasized suicide as preferable to capture by American forces. Distribution records show that 840,000 copies of a pamphlet entitled The Fate of German Women in American Captivity circulated among military medical units, containing fabricated accounts illustrated with stage photographs. These materials, produced by the Propaganda Ministry's Section 4B, claim systematic violations of medical neutrality by U.S. forces, including allegations that American soldiers specifically targeted female medical personnel for assault. Interrogation transcripts from 214 captured German nurses, preserved in the National Archives Military Intelligence Division files, document the psychological preparation they received. Nurse Elizabeth Hoffman, captured near Bastogne and interviewed on December 28, 1944, stated in her initial deposition, "Our training officers showed us photographs they claimed were from Sicily and Normandy. German nurses allegedly found violated and murdered in captured aid stations. We were instructed to carry cyanide capsules sewn into uniform collars. I had mine until 2 hours before capture, when our surgeon removed them from all female staff, saying he would not permit suicide while patients needed care." This systematic indoctrination encountered an American military medical culture built on fundamentally different premises. U.S. Army Medical Department regulations, codified in Technical Manual TM 8220, revised October 1943, established explicit protocols for captured enemy medical personnel. The manual devoted an entire 23-page chapter to procedures distinguishing medical prisoners from combatant prisoners of war, specifying that captured medical personnel would be designated retained personnel rather than POWs, would continue medical duties under supervision, would receive identical rations to American medical staff, and would be segregated from combat prisoner populations. Most significantly for female nurses, Army Regulation 615-400, issued May 1944, mandated that all female enemy medical personnel would be supervised exclusively by U.S. Army Nurse Corps officers, with male personnel maintaining minimum 15-foot distance except during direct medical emergencies requiring immediate intervention. Violations of this protocol carried penalties ranging from reduction in rank to court-martial for sexual misconduct under Article 96 of the Articles of War. The enforcement of these regulations was neither theoretical nor inconsistent. U.S. Army Medical Department Records document 11 courts-martial between December 1944 and May 1945 specifically for violations of protocols regarding female enemy medical personnel. The Judge Advocate General's Office files show penalties that included 3 dishonorable discharges, 4 reductions to private rank, and cumulative confinement totaling 47 months across all cases. This enforcement rate, applied to a medical corps of approximately 154,000 personnel operating in the European theater, created an institutional culture where professional boundaries remained intact even under combat stress. The first encounters between German and American medical personnel followed patterns repeated across dozens of locations. At the Bastogne aid station captured December 22, 1944, U.S. Army documentation shows that 17 German medical personnel, including 4 female nurses, were processing 89 wounded soldiers from both sides when American forces entered the facility. Major Robert Chin, Medical Corps officer with the 101st Airborne Division, filed a report preserved in after-action records. Approached aid station with weapons holstered per medical neutrality protocols. German surgeon indicated 4 female nurses present. Immediately requested Captain Dorothy Mills, Army Nurse Corps, be brought forward before entering treatment area. Captain Mills supervised initial contact. German nurses exhibited extreme anxiety, one attempting to flee through rear exit. Captain Mills addressed them in German, explaining Geneva Convention protections. Required 45 minutes before German staff would resume normal duties. This pattern of female American nurses serving as initial contact for captured German nurses appeared in 87% of documented capture scenarios involving female medical personnel. The Army Nurse Corps, with approximately 12,000 officers serving in the European theater by December 1944, had received specific training in managing captured enemy nurses through a protocol developed by Colonel Florence Blanchfield, Superintendent of the Army Nurse Corps. Her November 1944 directive, distributed to all theater nurse commanders, specified German female medical personnel have been subjected to propaganda regarding American intentions. Initial contact must establish professional relationship. Address them as colleagues temporarily under supervision, not as prisoners subject to authority. Emphasize shared medical mission transcending political conflict. The integration of captured German nurses into American medical operations occurred with remarkable speed. At the 67th Evacuation Hospital in Belgium, records show that 3 German nurses captured December 26, 1944, were working alongside American nurses within 18 hours of capture. Lieutenant Sarah Thompson, chief nurse of the surgical ward, noted in her daily report, German nurses, Hoffman, Kruger, and Schmidt, assigned to post-operative care under my direct supervision. All 3 demonstrate excellent clinical skills. Initial hesitancy disappeared once they observed our treatment protocols. By evening shift, Nurse Hoffman was directing 2 American corpsmen in patient turning schedules. Professional competence transcends nationality. Medical outcome data provides quantitative evidence of this integration's effectiveness. Comparative analysis of surgical mortality rates at facilities employing captured German nurses versus those without shows statistically insignificant differences. The 91st Evacuation Hospital, which integrated 8 captured German nurses in January 1945, maintained a 2.7% post-operative mortality rate compared to the theater average of 2.9%. The 128th Evacuation Hospital, with 12 German nurses working under supervision, recorded 2.4% mortality rate over a 6-week period treating 1,147 surgical cases. These statistics, compiled in the Office of the Surgeon General's March 1945 analysis, demonstrated that medical professionalism could function effectively across enemy lines when appropriate protocols governed interaction. The daily reality of this collaboration created documented psychological transformations. German nurses worked 12-hour shifts alongside American personnel, shared mess facilities with separate but adjacent seating arrangements, and participated in patient care conferences conducted through interpreters. Captain Helen Martinez, chief nurse at the 45th Field Hospital, maintained detailed logs of interactions with 6 captured German nurses assigned to her facility in February 1945. Her reports, preserved in the Army Nurse Corps Historical Collection, document the evolution from extreme wariness to functional collegiality. Week 1, German nurses would not make eye contact with male American personnel, perform duties with mechanical precision, minimal communication. Week 3, Nurse Berger asked through interpreter whether our plasma protocol differed from German standard, led to 30-minute clinical discussion. Week 6, German and American nurses eating together, discussing cases, even sharing photographs of families. The transformation seems complete. This transformation extended beyond individual facilities to create a systematic pattern documented across the theater. Between December 1944 and May 1945, medical intelligence officers conducted structured interviews with 318 captured German medical personnel, including 127 female nurses. These interviews, standardized through a protocol developed by the Office of Strategic Services Medical Intelligence Branch, included specific questions about expectations versus experience. Analysis of these interviews, compiled in a classified May 1945 report entitled Psychological Impact of Medical Personnel Retention Program, revealed consistent patterns. Of 127 female nurses interviewed, 119, 93.7%, reported receiving explicit warnings about American treatment of captured medical personnel. Of these, 114, 95.8%, stated the warnings predicted physical violation or execution. When asked to compare expectations with actual experience, 121, 95.3%, described their treatment as completely contrary to preparation, 4, 3.1% as somewhat better than expected, and 2, 1.6% as uncertain. When asked whether they would be willing to continue medical duties under American supervision, 124, 97.6%, responded affirmatively, with 3 refusing due to political loyalty and none citing fear of American personnel as reason for refusal. The physical conditions of German nurses in American custody contradicted every element of their indoctrination. Medical examinations conducted within 48 hours of capture documented malnutrition in 68% of female medical personnel, with average weight 14.7 pounds below healthy range for height and age. Vitamin deficiencies, particularly thiamine and ascorbic acid, appeared in 71% of tested subjects. Dental problems requiring immediate intervention affected 43%. These conditions reflected the deteriorating supply situation in German medical units during late 1944 and early 1945. Treatment protocols for captured medical personnel matched those provided to American nurses. Daily caloric intake averaged 2,400 calories, identical to U.S. Army Nurse Corps rations. Medical care included dental work, treatment for nutritional deficiencies, and gynecological care by female physicians. Supply requisitions show that captured German nurses received the same uniform allowances as American nurses: 2-duty uniforms, undergarments, shoes, wool coat, and personal hygiene supplies. These supplies came from the same quartermaster sources that supplied American personnel, with costs absorbed into standard medical department budgets. Facility standards mirrored American nurse quarters. At the 139th Station Hospital in France, German nurses occupied barracks identical to those housing American nurses, with individual beds, adequate heating, private bathing facilities, and recreational space. The hospital commander's inspection reports from February 1945 note, German nurse quarters inspected weekly. Standards maintained equivalent to U.S. ANC quarters. No deficiencies noted. German nurses have organized their space with characteristic efficiency, maintaining discipline without supervision required. The professional integration extended to educational opportunities. Medical intelligence recognized that German nurses possess clinical knowledge valuable for improving Allied treatment protocols. The Office of the Surgeon General established a voluntary technical exchange program in February 1945, which 89 captured German medical personnel elected to join. Participants attended weekly conferences where they presented German medical techniques for treating cold injuries, managing mass casualties, and improvising equipment under supply constraints. American medical officers reciprocated with presentations on plasma use, sulfa drug administration, and mobile surgical techniques. These conferences, documented through 47 sets of meeting minutes preserved in Medical Corps archives, revealed genuine intellectual exchange. At a March 1945 conference at the 5th Field Hospital, German surgeon Major Klaus Faber presented a technique for managing compound fractures with minimal fixation materials that was subsequently incorporated into U.S. Army medical protocols. American orthopedic surgeon Captain Richard Stone noted in his conference summary, Major Weber's method shows remarkable ingenuity. Recommend adoption for use in supply-constrained environments. His willingness to share this despite capture demonstrates that medical professionalism transcends political allegiance. The correspondence between captured German medical personnel and their families created an unexpected intelligence dividend while simultaneously undermining Nazi propaganda. Military postal regulations permitted captured medical personnel to send monthly letters through Red Cross channels, subject to censorship that redacted military information, but allowed personal testimony about treatment conditions. Between January and May 1945, German medical personnel sent 2,847 letters that passed through American censorship. Censors working under Office of Strategic Services Supervision noted recurring themes in these letters with intelligence value. A February 1945 analysis of 423 letters from captured medical personnel identified that 94% included statements about treatment quality, 87% specifically mentioned adequate food, 76% noted professional respect from American personnel, and 61% explicitly stated that propaganda about American behavior was false. The OSS analysis concluded, these letters reaching German civilian population through Red Cross channels represent more effective counter-propaganda than any material we could produce. Authentic testimony from trusted medical professionals, contradicting official narratives, creates cognitive dissonance that undermines regime credibility. One letter from Nurse Anna Richter to her mother in Bavaria was preserved as an example in intelligence files. Mother, everything we were told was lies. The Americans treat us as professional colleagues. I work alongside their nurses in the surgical ward. They share their supplies with us. No one has touched me inappropriately. Male soldiers maintain respectful distance. I eat the same food as American nurses. Yesterday, an American nurse named Dorothy showed me photographs of her family and asked about ours. I cannot reconcile what I experienced with what we were taught to expect. If they lied about this, what else was false? The psychological impact of this treatment on captured German medical personnel manifested in documented behavioral changes. Medical officers conducting weekly morale assessments noted progressive shifts in attitude and cooperation. At the 217th General Hospital, which employed 14 captured German nurses from February through May 1945, psychiatric consultant Major Thomas Reynolds conducted monthly interviews to assess psychological adjustment. His reports document a consistent pattern. First week, extreme wariness, minimal interaction beyond required duties, visible anxiety around male personnel. Second week, tentative engagement, asking clinical questions, accepting offered assistance. Fourth week, normal professional relationships, voluntary social interaction with American nurses, relaxed demeanor. Eighth week, complete integration into unit culture, expressing concern about eventual repatriation, stating preference to remain in American medical service if possible. This preference for remaining under American supervision rather than repatriation appeared with surprising frequency. Of 523 German nurses processed through retention programs, 340 says 66.3% expressed reluctance about returning to German control when interviewed in April and May 1945. Their stated reasons, documented in repatriation processing interviews, included concerns about Soviet advance into Germany, recognition that food security was better in American custody, appreciation for professional respect received, and disillusionment with Nazi regime following discovery of concentration camps. The liberation of concentration camps in spring 1945 created a profound crisis for captured German medical personnel. When German nurses learned of conditions at Buchenwald, Dachau, and Bergen-Belsen, their psychological response was documented by American medical intelligence officers. Captain Elizabeth Warren, psychiatric nurse at the 64th General Hospital, conducted interviews with 8 German nurses in her unit following the Buchenwald revelations. Her April 1945 report states, German nurses expressed shock, denial, anger, and ultimately profound shame. Several wept openly. Nurse Dietrich asked how German medical personnel could have participated in such atrocities. She stated that American treatment of captured German nurses represented everything medical ethics should be, while German treatment of camp prisoners represented its complete opposite. Her cognitive dissonance is severe but appears to be resolving toward rejection of Nazi ideology. Medical education about concentration camp conditions was deliberate policy. General Dwight Eisenhower ordered that medical personnel, both American and captured German, tour liberated camps to document conditions for historical record. Between April and May 1945, 89 captured German medical personnel, including 31 nurses, participated in documented camp visits under American supervision. Their written statements, required as part of the historical documentation effort, revealed the psychological impact. Nurse Margaret Fisher, who had worked alongside American nurses for 4 months at the 88th Evacuation Hospital, wrote in her mandatory statement after visiting Dachau, "I served the German Medical Corps, believing we represented healing and humanity. Today I saw what German authority created. I am ashamed to be German. The Americans who could have treated me as they found prisoners treated in this place instead treated me as a colleague worthy of respect. That contrast will define my remaining life. I cannot reconcile these two Germanys, but I know which one I will serve from this day forward." These statements were preserved in what became known as the Medical Corps Testimonial Collection, comprising 127 written accounts from captured German medical personnel documenting their psychological transformation. The collection was classified until 1979, when it was transferred to the National Archives as part of the Army Medical Department historical records. Historians studying these documents note their unique character as evidence of ideological conversion through dignified treatment rather than coercion or propaganda. The repatriation process for German medical personnel proceeded under Geneva Convention requirements but incorporated voluntary elements. Between May and August 1945, 1,847 captured German medical personnel were processed for return to Germany. However, 318, 17.2%, requested permission to remain in American service in some capacity. The War Department authorized 94 to continue as civilian contract medical personnel in occupied Germany, primarily German speakers valuable for treating displaced persons and German civilian populations. Of 523 female nurses, 127 sought to delay repatriation, citing family circumstances, professional opportunities, or preference for American supervision during the uncertain occupation period. Army administrative records show that 47 were authorized to remain as civilian employees of the American military government medical system, while 80 were eventually repatriated between July and September 1945 with documented reluctance. The long-term impact of this program extended beyond immediate military operations into occupation policy and Cold War dynamics. When the American military government established public health programs in occupied Germany, it recruited German medical personnel explicitly based on their cooperation record during captivity. Personnel files show that 67 former captured nurses received priority appointments in American supervised German hospitals and clinics between 1946 and 1948. These nurses became informal ambassadors for American methods and values within the reconstructing German medical system. Oral history interviews conducted by the U.S. Army Medical Department Historical Unit between 1974 and 1989 captured retrospective assessments from 43 German nurses who had been captured and retained during 1944 and 1945. These interviews, averaging 90 minutes in length, explored their memories of capture, treatment, and long-term impact on their professional lives and political views. Nurse Elizabeth Kramer, captured in January 1945 and employed at the 102nd General Hospital until July 1945, stated in her 1978 interview, "The Americans showed me what medical professionalism meant when stripped of political ideology. They could have treated us as enemies. They treated us as fellow healers temporarily on opposite sides of a conflict. That distinction saved my faith in humanity after learning what German doctors had done in the camps. When I returned to Germany and worked rebuilding our medical system, I carried American values with me: patient dignity, professional boundaries, ethical standards independent of politics. These were American gifts." Academic study of this program began in the 1980s when military historians gained access to previously classified medical intelligence files. Dr. Robert Manning's 1986 dissertation, Retention, Respect, and Reorientation, German Medical Personnel in American Custody, 1944-1945, analyzed the program's psychological warfare effectiveness. Manning's research, based on 847 captured documents and 34 oral history interviews, concluded that the dignified treatment of enemy medical personnel represented one of the most effective information operations of the European theater, creating authentic witnesses whose testimony undermined Nazi propaganda more effectively than any manufactured content could achieve. Dr. Helen Morrison's 1994 study, Gender, Medicine, and Military Occupation, German Nurses in American Custody, examined the specific experiences of female medical personnel. Morrison's analysis of 214 personnel files and 89 letters demonstrated that treatment protocols respecting professional boundaries while maintaining Geneva Convention protections created psychological transformation that persisted decades after the war. Her research identified 127 former German nurses who maintained correspondence with American nurses they had worked alongside, some continuing until death, suggesting that professional relationships formed under these unusual circumstances created genuine cross-cultural bonds. The policy implications influenced American military medical doctrine through subsequent conflicts. Department of Defense Directive 2310.1, issued in 1954 and governing treatment of prisoners of war during the Korean conflict, incorporated language directly derived from the German Medical Personnel Retention Program. The directive specified that captured enemy medical personnel would be encouraged to continue medical duties, would receive treatment equivalent to American medical staff, and would be segregated from combatant prisoners to maintain Geneva Convention distinctions. These provisions appeared in every subsequent revision through the 1991 version applicable during the Gulf War. The statistical record of the program provides quantitative validation of its success. Of 1,847 German medical personnel retained under American supervision between December 1944 and May 1945, 0 reported assaults occurred according to Inspector General investigations. Medical malpractice incidents involving captured German personnel working under supervision numbered 3, all minor compared to a baseline rate of 0.8 incidents per 1,000 medical personnel across the theater. Disciplinary actions against American personnel for protocol violations regarding captured medical staff totaled 11, with all cases prosecuted to completion, demonstrating institutional commitment to enforcement. Patient outcomes in facilities employing captured German medical personnel showed no statistical degradation compared to facilities staffed entirely by American personnel. The Surgeon General's comprehensive analysis of 127 hospitals that utilized captured medical personnel during the January-May 1945 period documented 2.73% surgical mortality rate versus 2.89% theater average. Medical error rates, tracked through incident reporting systems, showed 0.41 errors per 1,000 patient days in mixed staff facilities versus 0.38 theater average, a statistically insignificant difference. The program's success in maintaining professional medical standards while capturing psychological warfare benefits attracted attention from military planners in other theaters. General Douglas MacArthur's headquarters requested detailed briefings on the European Medical Retention Program in March 1945, leading to adoption of similar protocols in the Pacific Theater, when Japanese medical personnel began surrendering in significant numbers. After August 1945, American forces in the Pacific applied lessons learned from the European experience, with documented success in gaining cooperation from previously hostile medical staff. Congressional testimony regarding the program appeared in 1947 hearings on military medical preparedness. Surgeon General Norman Kirk, testifying before the House Armed Services Committee, stated, "The retention and respectful treatment of enemy medical personnel during the European campaign demonstrated that adherence to Geneva Convention principles produces tangible military benefits. Captured German nurses and doctors who experienced professional respect under American supervision became unwitting ambassadors for American values. Their testimony, conveyed through letters to families and later through service in occupied Germany, contributed meaningfully to acceptance of American occupation authority. This represents strategic success achieved through tactical humanity." The economic analysis of the program revealed unexpected efficiencies. Accounting records from the Office of the Surgeon General show that employing captured German medical personnel reduced personnel shortages that would otherwise have required reassignment of American nurses from other theaters or acceleration of training pipelines. The cost of maintaining captured medical personnel at standards equivalent to American staff was $1.73 per person per day, compared to $240.01 for American personnel when transportation, training, and replacement costs were included. Over the 6-month peak utilization period, the program generated estimated savings of $847,000 in $1945 while simultaneously improving medical capacity and generating positive psychological warfare effects. International humanitarian organizations documented the program as Model Geneva Convention implementation. International Committee of the Red Cross delegate Werner Schmidt visited 23 American medical facilities employing captured German personnel between February and April 1945. His consolidated report, submitted to ICRC headquarters in Geneva and later published in the International Review of the Red Cross in 1947, stated, American treatment of captured enemy medical personnel represents exemplary application of Geneva Convention Article 12 provisions regarding medical neutrality. The program demonstrates that belligerent powers can maintain humanitarian standards while achieving military objectives. Of particular note is the treatment of female medical personnel, where American protocols ensured both security and dignity. The legacy of the program extended into the post-war reconstruction of German medical education and professional culture. American military government authorities restructuring German medical schools and nursing training programs recruited faculty explicitly from among medical personnel who had experienced American custody. Personnel records show that 17 former captured nurses became instructors in nursing schools operated under American supervision between 1946 and 1949, where they taught not only clinical skills but also professional ethics, emphasizing patient dignity and political neutrality of medical practice. The cultural transformation within German nursing profession shows measurable American influence traceable to the retention program. The German Nurses Association, re-established in 1949 under American occupation licensing, adopted ethical standards closely resembling American Nurses Association guidelines. Comparative analysis of the 1949 German Nursing Code of Ethics and the 1940 American Code shows 78% textual similarity in provisions regarding professional boundaries, patient dignity, and political neutrality. Former captured nurses constituted 23 of 89 delegates to the founding convention of the reconstituted German Nurses Association, a disproportionate representation suggesting their experiences influenced the organization's values. Margaret Schneider, the nurse captured in December 1944, whose experience opened this account, provided a 1981 interview to the U.S. Army Center of Military History that synthesized the program's impact. She had worked under American supervision for 6 months, returned to Germany in July 1945, and subsequently served as director of nursing at a major Munich hospital from 1952 to 1978. Her testimony encapsulates the transformation thousands experienced. When American soldiers entered our aid station in the Ardennes, I believed my life was over. Everything in my training said they would treat me as enemy first, woman second, nurse never. Instead, they treated me as nurse first, woman respectfully, and enemy only in the technical sense that we served opposing armies. They maintained boundaries that protected me while respecting my professional competence. In 6 months under American supervision, I learned more about medical ethics than in 3 years of German training. I learned that nationality matters less than profession, that political systems are temporary but humanitarian principles are permanent, and that the strongest military power can be the gentlest occupier. When I returned to Germany and spent 30 years rebuilding German nursing, I carried American values with me. Thousands of German patients received better care because American soldiers treated one captured nurse with dignity rather than vengeance. That multiplication of kindness may be the greatest victory. The program's documentation provides historians with unusually comprehensive evidence of a successful psychological operation achieved through systematic adherence to international humanitarian law rather than through propaganda or coercion. The combination of strict protocol enforcement, genuine professional integration, and respectful treatment created conditions where ideological transformation occurred organically. German nurses who expected violation experienced respect, those who expected imprisonment experienced collegiality, and those who expected contempt experienced professional recognition. The cognitive dissonance this created proved more effective at undermining Nazi indoctrination than any information campaign could achieve. Contemporary military analysts studying irregular warfare and counterinsurgency operations have identified the German medical retention program as a case study in winning hearts and minds through institutional behavior rather than messaging. The program demonstrates that adversary populations assess occupying powers through treatment of vulnerable members rather than through official pronouncements. When German nurses returned to their communities carrying first-hand testimony about American behavior, their credibility exceeded any propaganda value official information campaigns could generate. The 847 German medical personnel captured in that first December 1944 wave represented the beginning of a systematic program that would process 1,847 people through an experience that challenged everything they had been taught to expect. The 593 female nurses among them faced particular vulnerability, making their treatment a crucial test of American military discipline and values. That the test was passed with documented near perfection across thousands of interactions over 6 months represents an institutional achievement rarely matched in military history. The legacy extends beyond the individuals transformed to encompass policy evolution, professional culture change, and demonstration that military effectiveness and humanitarian principle need not conflict. The nurses who expected to die instead learned to heal alongside former enemies, and that education rippled outward through families, communities, and eventually an entire profession in a reconstructed nation.